Film Fanatics is a 3-character elucidative commentary that aims to analyze film techniques for meaning, synthesize links between parts of the film, and evaluate on the overall effect this may have on the audience, as well as the director's purpose behind this.
This commentary will be focused on the film called Atonement, directed by Joe Wright. This said film was in fact Wright's adaptation of the original novel Atonement by Ian McEwan. Set in 3 time periods, 1935 England, Second World War in England and France, and present-day England, Atonement is a self-reflexive metafiction that illustrates the story of Bryony Tallis, an upper-class girl that makes a debatably half-innocent mistake that ruins the lives and romance of her older sister, Cecilia Tallis, and her lover, Robbie Turner. We then witness her adulthood becoming a consequential shadow of the mistake she's made and her attempt to atone for this through her reflections in writing. Joe Wright has cleverly used cinematography to acquaint us with the ideas of guilt and its overwhelming presence at a personal level. An example of this is the use of an over-the-shoulder shot as we observe Nurse Tallis staring at a reflection of herself in the window. Her contemplative facial expression hints at her vulnerability, trying to come into terms with her wrongful actions committed in the past. She is not only realizing that what she has done is wrong, but we can see her fighting a battle of guilt that she cannot win, because even after so long she still thinks about what happened and what she's done. The camera zooms out, alluding to her dissociation and isolation, which is possibly caused by her personal resentment. She is submerging herself in a stressful experience in an attempt to atone for these actions. Lighting is being used to cast shadow onto Bryony, as we see this in the shot in which she explains to Fiona the story she is typing in secret. This presents her internal conflict brought about by guilt. A close-up shot only illuminates half of her face as she explains her story in a desperate, pleading manner. She is surrounded and struggling in the darkness of her own sorrows because she knows what she's done and is unsure of herself. She feels alone. Dialogue has been used to reinforce the dehumanization caused by guilt. While Bryony stares at herself in the window of the hospital, she is greeted with no one but herself. "There is no Bryony," she said, quoting the head nurse when she tells her off for using her first name instead of Nurse Tallis. She says this in a soft, sorrowful tone, showing that she is distant and dissociated with reality. She seems to feel dehumanized as we begin to understand the true depth of her relationship with her sister and Robbie, completely isolated and disconnected from them. We see the director's success through these film aspects as we then begin to reflect on this and question, does she really deserve all this guilt, punishment, and personal alienation because of a crime she's committed in the past that she clearly resents herself from doing? Even if she were completely guilty, would that justify all the emotional suffering she's had? Does society endorse this mindset?
We see an amazing execution with lighting and sound to portray that no one can escape from the truth. While we see lights following her, we hear the sound motif of a typewriter but slowed down. This gives an effect of a suspenseful mood as the audience notices the unusually slow rhythm of the typewriter sound. This can be linked to Bryony's need to connect with the past. Not only is the typewriter sound used to remind the audience of this metafictional piece, but to also allude to her character as well. The sound of a typewriter is used whenever her character is on screen, to show that this is her story. We can be reminded that at the film's beginning, we are introduced to Bryony while she is typing out her play with the same sound motif. Bryony defines herself in her writing, and it is quite ironic when we see that her writing ends up defining her in the near conclusion of the film. Cinematography and lighting have also been beautifully used to portray guilt as an unstoppable force. We can see her submerged into darkness, with a tracking shot zooming out as she walks toward us, lights turning on to also track her until the final light fully illuminates her. No matter what she does, she cannot escape the truth because it will eventually shed light on her mistakes. Not only does the lighting provide emphasis to her sorrow, but it gives a significant aspect of emotion to Bryony's character. Bryony feels emotion, she feels regret, but she isn't trying to escape her feelings. She's trying to escape her past. Without the use of both lighting and sound, we would have never been able to witness how much it's taken a toll on her and feel any pity for her regrets and mistakes in the past. We would have considered Bryony to be completely guilty without any further consideration. This begs the question, is there a line between innocent and guilty? Is repenting for a crime enough to make you innocent?
Although this may not be a dystopian fiction, it is Bryony that slowly falls into the world of her own dystopia as she comes into terms with her past actions. Placing the camera over Bryony's shoulder transports us into the same position as the protagonist, which allows us to feel Bryony's alienation. Not only does the audience know she's trapped, but they will also feel trapped. This questions the audience into not only thinking about her identity, but their own as well. What if we knowingly committed a crime like her? Do we deserve mercy if we repent for it? Lighting partially illuminates her face to enforce these questions, as it suggests Bryony to have a different side to her innocence. She feels guilty. Is that enough to make up for what she's done? By making the audience feel trapped in darkness, we see Bryony in a different light as merely a victim of her emotional naivety when she finds out that she liked Robbie. We sympathize with her. The director wants us to feel conflicted because maybe she did what she did out of love and jealousy with what she cannot have, Robbie's love. She's human. She can feel jealousy. This encourages the audience to apply this to their lives as well. You can't judge anyone for their convictions because not only are we human and we can make mistakes all the damn time, but we can't judge anyone without knowing their full story. We know Robbie is innocent because we know his full story. Overall, the audience is forced to question the blurred lines between being innocent and guilty. This then critiques the justice system because it questions, should the incarcerated and those in death row be given a second chance? Is repenting enough for them? Is feeling guilty enough to atone for your crimes? Personally, I felt very uneasy because I started to feel cynical about the justice system, which could be a possible director's purpose. What if those in death row were falsely accused? How do you prove yourself innocent if you were falsely accused like Robbie? Wright has once again gracefully incorporated cinematography in his work to present how innocence can be changed and portrayed differently. The use of close-up shots allows the actors to express their emotions easily. We see this in the final interview scene with older Bryony explaining that she was never able to make things right with her sister or Robbie. We can understand that the plot is not only the effects of Bryony's actions as a young child, but how that may have affected her innocence as she grew up. Even if Bryony initially accused Robbie on purpose, she tries very hard to right her wrong later on in the film. Does this make her less guilty? Another example of cinematography is the mid-shots and over-the-shoulder shots, which display and hint at the presence of a mirror. Even when she is older, she is still reflecting and looking at herself. Both Bryony and the audience can question throughout the film, did she do the right thing? Will her actions ever be justified? Mise-en-scene was cleverly used to symbolize self-acceptance and self-determination as to whether one is guilty or innocent. A mid-shot in the scene displays Bryony in a backstage room surrounded by mirrors with a vase full of roses, makeup, and pills. Most of the scene is filled with mirrors, and if not all of the shots in the scene, Bryony is the centerpiece of them, symbolizing her significance and how the novel is her creation. Everything in the film we have seen is how she viewed the world, her actions, and herself. We see the consequences of her deceit and how the story she's written is merely her interpretation of what happened, and the ending she wished for Robbie and Cecilia. Most of the lighting in the scene is dark and brings a gloomy mood to the shots as a whole. It seems to be shining on her in such a way that puts her under a spotlight. There's very bright lighting around her, but appears to be softer on Bryony. She's shining light on the truth, but the truth also shines light on her. This is where we as the audience synthesize our final judgments of her as a character. Light shines on her fully in the scene because she is the only one left to uncover the truth in her story. At this very moment, she has a mutual relationship with her truth. She's the last hope of discovering the final truth of the story, and the story is her last hope of atonement for her crimes. We see the director's success through these film aspects, as we then begin to reflect on this and question, can you go from being guilty to innocent just as easily as you can go from innocent to guilty? And most importantly, how do we function with truth and deceit in society? We learn Bryony's truth, but is this enough to give Robbie and Cecilia a voice? Is it enough to atone for her crimes against them? Wright utilizes over-the-shoulder shots and dim lighting throughout the movie, and in many cases, involves the character looking at their own reflection in the mirror. This is seen when Bryony is finding evidence to falsely accuse Robbie of rape. In the mirror, she seems motionless. Another over-the-shoulder shot is seen when she stares at her reflection in the window of the hospital. In this reflection, she seems sorrowful. When older Bryony looks at herself in an actual mirror this time, she seemed calm, perhaps even a little anxious, but ready to come into terms with reality. Wright is successful here because he uses lighting to contrast between different aspects of innocence within the same character. While older Bryony is calm to face herself with what she's done, the younger Bryonies were clouded in darkness. Not only can there be multiple different sides to the same person, but people can change as they grow. Cinematography and mise-en-scene have been used to help the audience understand that Bryony is the master of her own story. In this scene, we see the vases of roses as a symbol of her dying, and the mirrors, presented in a wide shot, are a symbol of her self-reflexive novel. Another example of mise-en-scene is when Wright decides to start the movie with a panning shot of younger Bryony's toy animals and an ark, which is religious symbolism for Noah's Ark, known as the Day of Atonement. This can allude to Bryony playing God, as she synthesizes her own novel with her own ending. Wright cleverly uses religious symbolism and the placement of objects to allow the audience to understand the director's grasp on atonement. It not only has a religious aspect, but a life-changing concept over time. Wright has shown through Bryony that there is a step-by-step process of atoning for something. It also questions the justice system that states that if one commits a crime, they are guilty. But what if they realize the true depth of their crime and try to atone for it like Bryony? Wright allows the audience to question, is there room in the justice system for a second chance?
Wright uses lighting to allow the audience to understand the importance of viewing the truth. The whole novel that Bryony has written, setting the basis for the film Atonement, is purely based on perception and the differing variations of truth. Lighting is used to show the consequences of bending the truth, as we see Bryony go through many stages of grief and regret throughout the whole movie. The audience learns that truth is a double-edged sword in which it can be distorted to harm others or retold to set others free, which older Bryony has done at the end of the novel. Wright teaches the audience the important lesson of playing God and how it can ruin lives. We see that younger Bryony has always admired the power of words being able to control stories and the relative characters within those stories. Wright challenges the audience's thinking by playing on the aspect of perception. He teaches and encourages the audience to not judge a character simply on their actions. It has been widely disputed by many keen fans of the movie whether or not Bryony should be brought to justice or if she was even guilty in the first place. However, personally, there may never be a true answer to this because even now, we still don't know the full story of why she synthesized the ending or why she falsely accused in the first place. Mise-en-scene allows us to view Bryony's wider surroundings to understand the director's interpretation of the plot. Not only is it crucial to follow the main character, but to give insight to how a character interacts with their environment. In this shot, mise-en-scene provides an insight to Bryony's need for control and foreshadows her ability to control as the novel is written by her. This allows the audience to make a crucial connection with the film's plot. In this shot, the mise-en-scene shows the true drastic effects of guilt and how even in her final moments, she's still trying to atone for her mistakes even after spending her whole life doing so. We are able to make connections with important ideas as we follow the character through her interactions in environments and the environments she puts herself in throughout the film. Atonement is an extraordinary piece that offers the truth, but mocks the perception and interpretations of it. We think we know the full story, but we simply do not.